When you stop reaching out, the dynamic of a relationship shifts in ways that are both subtle and profound. The absence of your usual effort creates an empty space that a man cannot ignore. This silence is not just an external phenomenon. It penetrates deeply into the emotional fabric of the relationship, forcing him to confront the reality of what you contributed and what he may have taken for granted. The power of withdrawal lies in its ability to act as a mirror, reflecting the true state of his feelings and priorities. Initially, your absence might feel like a void, but it quickly becomes a presence in itself. It is as if the energy you once invested into the relationship has left an imprint, one that lingers even after you've stepped back. This imprint begins to make him realize the weight of what was once there. The calls, the texts, the little gestures that perhaps went unnoticed. Humans are creatures of habit, and when a pattern is disrupted, it stirs discomfort. For a man who has grown accustomed to you always initiating, your withdrawal creates a ripple effect. He begins to notice the gap, not just in communication, but in emotional connection. The silence speaks volumes, louder than any words could. This shift in dynamics forces a man to do something he might not have done before: reflect. In your absence, he is left alone with his thoughts. He starts to replay conversations, moments, and interactions. What did you say last time? Was there a hint of dissatisfaction in your tone? Did he miss an opportunity to reciprocate the effort you were putting in? These questions begin to circulate in his mind, creating a sense of unease. The withdrawal of your presence makes him reevaluate his own role in the relationship. Suddenly, the things he brushed off or ignored take on new significance. He forever changed his perception of you. This reflection is not just about missing you. It's about realizing the impact you had. When you consistently reach out, it's easy for the other person to grow complacent. Your efforts can inadvertently create a dynamic where your presence is expected rather than appreciated. But when you stop, the absence disrupts this cycle. It's a wake-up call that forces him to question not only his behavior, but also his feelings. He starts to think about why you stopped. Was it something he did or didn't do? This process can be uncomfortable, even unsettling, but it's necessary. Without this pause, there's little room for growth or genuine understanding. As this internal dialogue unfolds, a man might also begin to feel the loss of your energy. Relationships are not just about words. They are about the unseen currents of emotional investment. When you reach out, you share a part of your energy, your attention, your care, your concern. This energy creates a connection, a bond. When it's gone, the emptiness is palpable. It's not just about missing your messages or your voice. It's about the emotional nourishment that came with it. Your withdrawal highlights the intangible things you've brought to the table. The sense of security, the feeling of being valued, the comfort of knowing someone is there. This shift doesn't just affect how he feels, it affects how he acts. In the beginning, he might resist the change, trying to convince himself that your absence is temporary or unimportant. But as time goes on, the reality sets in. The more he feels the absence, the more he begins to recognize what he's losing or has already lost. This recognition can lead to a variety of responses. For some, it ignites a desire to reconnect, to bridge the gap you've created. For others, it forces them to confront their own shortcomings and decide whether they are willing to meet you at the level you deserve. The power of withdrawal is not about manipulation or games. It's about creating space for both individuals to see the truth of the relationship. When you step back, you give him the opportunity to step forward or not. Either way, the clarity that emerges is invaluable. Your decision to stop reaching out is not just an act of self-preservation. It's a catalyst for transformation. It shifts the focus from external validation to internal reflection for both you and him. The silence becomes a tool, one that dismantles old patterns and lays the groundwork for something more authentic. By pulling back, you force a man to engage with the relationship in a new way. He can no longer rely on you to carry the weight of communication or connection. Instead, he is faced with a choice: to rise to the occasion or to let things fade. This moment of choice is pivotal. It reveals not only his feelings for you, but also his capacity for growth and change. Without your constant efforts, he has the chance to take responsibility for his part in the dynamic. And in doing so, he either strengthens the bond or allows it to dissolve, making room for something better for both of you. When you stop chasing and reaching out, you send a profound and unspoken message to both yourself and the other person. You value yourself enough to step back and prioritize your own well-being. This shift is not just a physical withdrawal, but an energetic realignment that communicates self-worth on a deep level. It's not a loud declaration. It's a quiet yet impactful move that speaks volumes about who you are and what you stand for. The act of no longer chasing isn't about anger or resentment. It's about respect for yourself and the boundaries of a relationship. Chasing, whether it's through frequent communication or constant attempts to maintain a connection, can often create an unintended dynamic. It places you in a position where your value seems dependent on the attention or response of the other person. Over time, this can lead to a sense of imbalance where your efforts become expected rather than appreciated. When you decide to stop, it disrupts this pattern in a way that is both unexpected and transformative. It shifts the narrative, reminding both you and the other person that your worth is not tied to how much you give or how often you reach out. This change in behavior has an immediate psychological impact. The other person, particularly a man in this dynamic, begins to notice the absence of your effort. But it's not just the lack of communication that stands out, it's the underlying message of self-respect that resonates. Without saying a word, you've made it clear that your time and energy are valuable, and that you won't continue to pour into something that isn't reciprocated or balanced. This realization can be jarring, especially if the man has grown accustomed to your consistent effort. It forces him to reassess not only his behavior, but also his perception of you. On a deeper level, this shift communicates a sense of confidence and independence. Confidence isn't about being loud or assertive. It's about knowing your worth and acting accordingly. By stepping back, you demonstrate that you are secure in yourself, that you don't need constant validation from external sources to feel whole. This kind of self-assurance is incredibly attractive and often commands respect. It challenges the other person to see you in a new light. Not as someone who is always available or seeking approval, but as someone who is strong and self-sufficient. When you stop chasing, you also create space for the other person to step up. This space is crucial because it allows the man to take the initiative, to show his interest and effort in a way that is authentic and self-motivated. It's easy to take something for granted when it's always there, but when it's gone, its value becomes undeniable. Your withdrawal creates an opportunity for the other person to recognize what they may have overlooked or undervalued. Selflessness is an opportunity for the other person to recognize what they may have overlooked or undervalued. It shifts the focus from your actions to their own, prompting them to reflect on their role in the relationship. This act of stepping back is not just a message to the other person, it's a profound statement to yourself. It's a way of affirming that you are enough as you are, that your value is inherent and not dependent on how much you do for someone else. This realization is empowering and often leads to a shift in how you approach relationships in general. It's a reminder that healthy connections are built on mutual effort and respect, not on one-sided chasing or constant giving. The act of not chasing also challenges societal norms and expectations, particularly for women. There's often an unspoken pressure to nurture, to reach out, to keep the lines of communication open. But this pressure can lead to burnout and a sense of imbalance in relationships. By stepping back, you break free from these expectations and reclaim your power. You show that you are not defined by what you give to others, but by the strength and value you hold within yourself. This shift also has a ripple effect on the relationship dynamic. The man begins to see you differently, not as someone who is always available or eager to please, but as someone who is confident, self-aware, and capable of standing on their own. This new perspective often sparks a sense of admiration and respect, which can lead to a deeper and more meaningful connection. Executive functioning, professional commitment, financial independence. It's not about playing games or manipulating the other person. It's about setting a standard for how you want to be treated and holding firm to that standard. By prioritizing your own well-being and stepping back, you give yourself the gift of clarity. You begin to see the relationship for what it truly is, without the noise of constant effort clouding your judgment. This clarity allows you to make decisions that are in alignment with your values and goals, rather than being driven by a need for approval or validation. It's a transformative process that not only changes the way the other person sees you, but also changes the way you see yourself. When you stop reaching out, the energy dynamic in the relationship shifts dramatically, creating a ripple effect that touches every corner of the connection. This silence becomes a powerful tool, one that compels a man to evaluate not only the relationship, but also his role within it. He is no longer able to lean on the comfort of your consistent effort. And this newfound absence often prompts him to act. This action is not always immediate or deliberate, but it is inevitable. The void left by your withdrawal does not go unnoticed. It demands acknowledgement, and in many cases, response. Stand your ground. Listen to who you fight. Breathe the war rides. Be the knife, if it be necessary. Men are wired to respond to change, particularly when it disrupts a routine they've come to rely on. Your reaching out may have been a cornerstone of the relationship, a constant that provided emotional security or a sense of connection. When that constant disappears, it leaves a gap that can feel both unsettling and thought-provoking. This disruption forces a man to examine the role you played and the value of your presence. What was once taken for granted now becomes a point of focus, sparking curiosity, reflection, and even a sense of urgency. In this process, a man often begins to confront the deeper emotional impact of your withdrawal. The lack of communication becomes more than just an absence of messages or calls. It becomes a mirror reflecting his own feelings and actions. He starts to notice the subtleties of your previous efforts, the thoughtful messages, the way you checked in, the consistency that gave the relationship a sense of rhythm. These small gestures, which might have seemed insignificant at the time, now stand out as symbols of your care and commitment. The realization that these gestures are no longer present can be jarring, prompting him to consider why they mattered so much and what their absence means for the relationship. This period of silence often brings about a heightened sense of awareness. In the absence of your effort, he is left to fill the void, either by reaching out himself or by sitting with the discomfort of the silence. For many men, this moment becomes a turning point. It forces them to take stock of their feelings, to question whether they are willing to let the relationship fade or if they are ready to step up and meet you halfway. This internal dialogue is not always conscious, but it is deeply impactful. It creates a space where he must confront the reality of what he wants and whether he is willing to work for it. As this awareness grows, so does his understanding of the imbalance that may have existed in the relationship. Your decision to stop reaching out highlights the effort you were putting in, and by contrast, the effort he may have been withholding. This realization can be humbling, even uncomfortable, but it is often necessary for growth. It sheds light on the dynamics of the relationship, revealing whether it was built on mutual effort or one-sided giving. This clarity is invaluable not only for him, but also for you. It allows both parties to see the truth of the connection, free from the distortions of habit or routine. The shift in dynamic also creates an opportunity for him to take action. When you step back, you give him the space to step forward. This is a critical moment, one that tests his willingness and ability to invest in the relationship. For some men, this realization sparks a renewed sense of purpose. They recognize the value of what they risk losing and are motivated to act, whether by reaching out, apologizing, or making a greater effort to connect. For others, the silence becomes a litmus test, revealing whether they were truly invested in the relationship or merely comfortable with the status quo. Your decision to stop reaching out also has a profound impact on your own sense of self. It is a declaration of your worth, a statement that you are not willing to pour into a relationship where your effort is not matched. This shift is not about manipulation or playing games. It is about honoring your own boundaries and creating space for authentic connection. When you stop reaching out, you reclaim your energy and redirect it toward yourself. This act of self-preservation is empowering, reminding you that your value is not dependent on how much you give to others. The ripple effects of your withdrawal extend beyond the immediate relationship. They influence how you approach connections in the future, setting a new standard for what you are willing to accept. This newfound clarity and confidence become part of your energy, shaping the way others perceive and interact with you. The act of stepping back is not just a momentary decision. It is a transformative process that reshapes your understanding of yourself and your relationships. So, last, for the man, this period of silence becomes a test of his character and his feelings. It challenges him to confront the reality of his emotions and decide whether he is willing to meet you at your level. The absence of your effort becomes a powerful motivator, one that compels him to act or to let go. In either case, the outcome is a reflection of the true nature of the relationship, providing clarity and direction for both parties. The silence, far from being a void, becomes a catalyst for change and growth. When you stop reaching out, the silence you create speaks louder than any words you could ever say. This silence is not merely the absence of communication, but an intentional withdrawal that carries a powerful message. Your energy is no longer freely available to those who do not reciprocate or value it. This shift in dynamic does more than just disrupt the status quo. It ignites a cascade of emotional and psychological responses in the person on the receiving end. It compels them to confront the reality of their own behavior and feelings in ways that can be both unsettling and transformative. One of the most immediate effects of your silence is the creation of space, emotional, mental, and even physical. This space is essential because it disrupts the routine they may have grown accustomed to. People often become comfortable with the presence of someone who is always available, someone who consistently makes the effort to connect and maintain the relationship. This comfort can lead to complacency, where your presence is appreciated but perhaps not fully valued. When you step back, this sudden void left behind forces them to reckon with the absence of what they had taken for granted. In this space, they are left with their own thoughts and emotions. The absence of your outreach becomes a mirror, reflecting their own patterns of behavior. It prompts them to question why they haven't been the one to initiate, why they haven't matched your energy, and what this says about their own investment in the relationship. This kind of self-reflection is rarely comfortable, but is often necessary for growth. This kind of self-reflection is rarely comfortable, but is often necessary for growth. It brings to light the unspoken dynamics of the connection, highlighting whether it was built on mutual effort or on the disproportionate giving of one person. The silence also triggers a psychological phenomenon known as scarcity. When something that was once abundant and readily available is suddenly removed, its perceived value increases. This is not about manipulating emotions, but about human nature. People often fail to appreciate what they have until it is no longer there. Your silence creates a sense of scarcity that makes your presence more noticeable and, by extension, more valuable. It forces them to confront the reality of what they may lose if they do not take action to bridge the gap your absence has created. It forces them to look within themselves and decide if what you promise is truly worth risking. As they sit with the discomfort of your silence, they may also begin to recognize the unique qualities you brought to the relationship, the small, thoughtful gestures, the emotional support, the consistent presence. These are not easily replaced or forgotten. Your withdrawal allows them to see the full scope of what you offered, free from the distractions of daily interactions. See when the distractions of daily interaction. This clarity can evoke a sense of longing and even regret, as they realize the depth of the connection they may have taken for granted. The absence of communication also shifts the power dynamic in subtle but significant ways. When you are the one consistently reaching out, you are, in a sense, positioning yourself as the pursuer. This can create an imbalance where the other person feels less compelled to invest effort because they know you will always be there to pick up the slack. By stepping back, you reclaim your energy and, in doing so, level the playing field. You are no longer the one driving the connection. And this forces them to step into a more active role if they wish to maintain the relationship. This shift can be particularly impactful for a man who may not have fully recognized the value of your presence. Men often respond to challenges and changes in dynamic with action. Your silence serves as a challenge, one that requires them to decide how much they value the relationship and what they are willing to do to keep it. It pushes them out of their comfort zone and compels them to take responsibility for their own role in the connection. At the same time, your decision to stop reaching out is an act of self-respect and self-preservation. It sends a clear message both to the other person and to yourself that you will no longer pour your energy into something that is not reciprocated. This is not an act of punishment or manipulation, but a boundary-setting exercise that prioritizes your well-being. It is a declaration that your time, effort, and emotions are valuable and deserve to be met with equal investment. And therefore, it deserves to be met on purpose. This boundary setting has a ripple effect on your own sense of self-worth. By stepping back, you reaffirm to yourself that you are worthy of a balanced and respectful relationship. This shift in perspective can be transformative, not only for the way you view yourself, but also for the way others perceive and treat you. When you carry yourself with self-respect, it sets a standard for how you expect to be treated. And this standard influences all your interactions moving forward. For the person on the receiving end, your silence becomes a test of their own emotional maturity and investment in the relationship. It challenges them to step up, to take initiative, and to show that they value what you bring to the table. This is not always an easy process, as it requires them to confront their own feelings and fears. However, it is often in these moments of discomfort that true growth and connection occur. Therefore, your silence is more than just an absence of communication. It is a profound act of empowerment that reshapes the dynamics of the relationship. It creates space for reflection, both for you and for the other person, and sets the stage for a deeper and more authentic connection. When you decide to stop reaching out, a unique and transformative shift occurs within the dynamic of the relationship. This choice, though seemingly simple on the surface, is rooted in a profound psychological and emotional recalibration that affects both you and the other person. It is not merely about ceasing communication, but about reclaiming your power, energy, and emotional space. This withdrawal sends ripples through the relationship, altering the way both parties perceive and interact with one another. For a man, this change is often met with a mixture of confusion, curiosity, and reflection. When someone who was once a constant source of connection suddenly steps back, it forces him to confront the nature of the relationship. He is no longer able to rely on the predictable rhythm of your communication. And this disruption compels him to reassess his own role and level of investment. The silence you create becomes an invisible presence, a weight that he cannot ignore. And this presence challenges him to evaluate his priorities and emotions. This process of evaluation begins subtly, often without conscious acknowledgement. At first, the absence of your messages or calls may feel like a minor disruption, a break in the routine. But as time goes on, the weight of that absence grows heavier. He starts to notice the little things, the way you used to check in, the thoughtful gestures that added value to his day, the sense of connection that now feels distant. These realizations build gradually, creating a sense of awareness that was previously overshadowed by the comfort of your consistent effort. In this state of reflection, he may begin to question his own behavior. Why didn't he reach out more? Why did he let you carry the weight of maintaining the relationship? These questions can be uncomfortable, as they force him to confront aspects of himself that he may have avoided addressing. This discomfort, however, is often the catalyst for growth. It pushes him to step outside his comfort zone and take responsibility for his own actions, or lack thereof. The silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back the imbalance that may have existed, and challenging him to consider how he wants to move forward. The book ends, and the writer moves on. The absence of your effort also creates a sense of scarcity, amplifying the value of what he once took for granted. Human nature often leads us to appreciate things more deeply when they are no longer readily available. Your withdrawal taps into this psychological principle, making him more aware of what he is missing. The things he may have overlooked: your kindness, your support, your consistent presence, now stand out as precious and irreplaceable. This heightened awareness can evoke a range of emotions, from regret to longing. As he begins to understand the depth of your contribution to the relationship, as he navigates this period of silence, he is faced with a choice. He can either let the relationship fade into the background or take proactive steps to bridge the gap. This choice is influenced by his own level of emotional maturity, self-awarenesses, and willingness to invest. For some men, the realization of what they stand to lose is enough to prompt action. They may begin to reach out, to apologize for their complacency, or to express a renewed commitment to the relationship. This effort is not just about rekindling the connection, but about demonstrating that they recognize and value your worth. On the other hand, there are instances where a man's reaction to your silence reveals his true intentions. If he chooses not to act, it may indicate that his investment in the relationship was not as deep as you believed. While this outcome can be painful, it also provides clarity. Your decision to stop reaching out serves as a litmus test, revealing the true nature of the relationship and whether it is built on mutual effort and respect. In which case, there are many moments in the battle when your initial impulse was not as deep as it looks. For you, this decision to withdraw is both empowering and transformative. It is a declaration of your self-worth, a recognition that you are not obligated to pour your energy into a connection that is not equally reciprocated. This act of stepping back allows you to reclaim your time and focus, redirecting it toward yourself and your own growth. It is a reminder that your value does not depend on how much you give to others, but on how much you honor and nurture yourself. This period of silence is also an opportunity for you to reflect on your own patterns and boundaries. Were you overextending yourself in the relationship? Were you accepting less than what you deserved? These questions, while difficult, are essential for understanding and breaking any cycles that may have led to imbalance. By taking the time to reflect and realign, you set a new standard for how you wish to be treated moving forward. The silence you create is not an act of manipulation, but a powerful boundary-setting exercise. It communicates that you will no longer chase or overcompensate, that you expect relationships to be built on mutual respect and effort. This boundary setting has a ripple effect, influencing how others perceive and interact with you. When you carry yourself with this level of self-respect, it becomes evident to those around you that you will not settle for anything less. For the man, your silence is a moment of reckoning. It forces him to confront his feelings, to evaluate his priorities, and to decide whether he is willing to rise to the occasion. This process of introspection can be uncomfortable, but it is often necessary for growth. The absence of your effort becomes a challenge, one that requires him to take responsibility for his own role in the relationship. In this dynamic, both parties are given the space to grow and reflect. Your silence is not an end, but a beginning, a turning point that reshapes the way you view yourself and the relationships you choose to nurture. When you stop reaching out, the emotional dynamic of the relationship undergoes a profound shift. It is not just the absence of communication that impacts the other person, but the deeper implication that their actions, or lack thereof, are no longer sufficient to hold your attention or merit your continued investment. This silence creates an undeniable presence, forcing the other person to reevaluate their own behavior and the role they play in the relationship. For a man, this change is often a jarring wake-up call, compelling him to confront not only the immediate circumstances, but also deeper aspects of his emotional and psychological world. The withdrawal of your effort challenges him in ways he may not initially understand. At first, he might rationalize your silence, assuming it to be a temporary mood or a passing phase. But as the days stretch into weeks, the void you have left becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. The consistency and reliability of your communication, which he may have grown accustomed to, is suddenly gone. This absence does more than disrupt his routine. In this space of uncertainty, he begins to question himself. Why haven't you reached out? What changed? These questions can lead him down a path of self-exploration, often uncovering emotions he has kept buried or unacknowledged. It forces them to examine their own feelings, to confront the possibility that they have taken something valuable for granted, and to acknowledge that their own actions may have contributed to this shift. This process of introspection often leads to a heightened awareness of your value. The little things you did, the texts to check in, the moments of encouragement, the consistent presence are now seen in stark relief against the backdrop of your silence. He begins to recognize that these gestures were not obligations but gifts, given freely out of care and connection. This realization often brings with it a mix of regret and longing. He may find himself replaying memories, thinking about the times you were there for him, and wondering why he didn't appreciate it more when he had the chance. The emotional impact of your silence is compounded by the psychological phenomenon of loss aversion. Humans are wired to feel the pain of losing something more acutely than the pleasure of gaining it. When you stop reaching out, it creates a sense of loss that can be difficult for him to process. This is not just about the absence of communication, but about the deeper implications of that absence. The possibility that he is losing someone who genuinely cared for him, someone who added value to his life in ways he didn't fully acknowledge until now. And as we conclude this lesson, as this sense of loss grows, it often prompts a shift in his behavior. The realization that you are no longer reaching out can act as a catalyst for change. He may start to question his own passivity, recognizing that his lack of effort has consequences. This newfound awareness can motivate him to take action, whether by reaching out to you, reflecting on his own emotional patterns, or reevaluating his priorities. The silence you create becomes a powerful motivator, compelling him to confront aspects of himself that he may have avoided addressing. For many men, this period of reflection and self-exploration is both challenging and transformative. It requires them to step outside their comfort zones, to take responsibility for their own actions, and to make decisions about how they want to move forward. This process is not always linear or easy. It often involves moments of doubt, frustration, and vulnerability. But it is in these moments of discomfort that true growth occurs. Your decision to stop reaching out also serves as a powerful boundary-setting exercise. It communicates without words that you are no longer willing to pour your energy into a connection that is not reciprocated. This boundary forces him to confront the reality of the relationship and to decide whether he is willing to rise to meet your standards. It is a moment of reckoning, one that challenges him to evaluate his own level of commitment and effort, challenging me and cause me to resist him within myself to change the relationship expectations. It is a moment of reckoning, one that challenges him to evaluate his. For you, this silence is an act of empowerment. It is a declaration of your self-worth and a commitment to honoring your own needs and boundaries. By stepping back, you create the space needed for both you and the other person to grow. This space is not about punishment or manipulation, but about clarity and alignment. It allows you to see the relationship for what it truly is, free from the distractions of constant effort and communication. The emotional and psychological impact of your silence extends beyond the immediate relationship. It sets a precedent for how you choose to engage with others moving forward. By refusing to chase or overextend yourself, you send a clear message to the world about the value you place on your time, energy, and emotional well-being. This shift in perspective can be transformative, not only for your own sense of self-worth, but also for the way others perceive and interact with you. As he navigates the silence, he is left with a choice. He can either step up and match your effort, demonstrating that he values and respects the connection, or he can let the relationship fade into the background. Either way, your decision to stop reaching out provides clarity, revealing the true nature of the relationship and whether it is built on mutual effort and respect.